everybody. This is going to be the first of 3 short Excel videos to show you how to work with different types of formulas and functions inside of Excel. I've got a template already made up here with a scenario. I hope that the scenario is pretty clear. I've got a row number, I've got a quantity of something, and then a price. And then I have a column that says total before discount, total sale price. And then down below I have subtotal, tax, and grand total. So this looks like maybe an invoice or maybe a receipt from a store or something like that. Okay. So let's take a look at how we would fill this in. All right. The row number is simply intended to be just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could come in here. Oh, before I do this though, every one of these rectangles in Excel is called a cell, C-E-L-L, and each cell has a name. Okay, the particular cell that I have clicked on right here is in column D and row 16. And so this cell's name is D16, and you can see in the corner it says D16. If I want to go to a certain cell, I can simply click on it. We're going to have some spreadsheets that are quite large. So one thing that you can do is click up here in this name box and just type A1, and it'll take me back to A1. So if I ever have a really big spreadsheet and need to get up to the top, I usually do that. But you can also scroll, okay? You can use your mouse to move around, things like that. But let's go ahead and look at these row numbers. I want my first row number to be 1. The second one should be 2, and I could type a 2 in here. That would be fine. But there's an easier way to do it. If this spreadsheet had maybe 50 rows in it, you don't want to waste your time just typing the numbers 1 through 50. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use a formula and let Excel count for me. When I enter a formula in Excel, every formula begins with a number. Oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Every formula in Excel begins with an equal sign. So when I want Excel to do a computation, I first type an equal sign. Now here's what I want this to do. I want it to be 1 larger than the number above it. So I'm going to click on the cell above. My formula says now, take the number that's in cell A2 and put it in cell A3. But I don't want that. I want it to go up by 1. So I'm going to type +1. Here's how I read this. Equals, do a computation. The computation says take the thing that's in cell A2. The thing in cell A2 is the number 1. So I'm thinking take the number 1 and add 1 to it. So I'm taking the number 1 and adding 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2. When I press enter, sure enough, that's a 2. Now, you might be thinking, why would I want to do that? It's harder to type all those formulas than it is just to type the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But now look what's going to happen. I'm going to click back on this cell where the formula is. You can see up here in this bar, there's the formula. I'm going to take my cursor. You can see right now it's kind of a big fat white cross. If I move the cursor up to this bottom right corner where that little dot is, see the dot in the corner? If I move close enough, this becomes a black crosshair. Now that it's a black crosshair, I'm going to click and hold down my mouse or my trackpad, hold it down, and just scroll or move your finger down in the trackpad, and then release. And that formula continues on. We can look right here where the 3 is. I'm going to double tap so you can see the formula here, or you can see it up there. And it says, do a computation, take whatever is in cell A3. Oh, that's right above, so that's the number 2. Take the number 2 and add 1 to it. So 2 plus 1 equals 3. And when I press enter, sure enough, that's a 3. Everything increments down when I fill a formula. Just to review, I'm going to look at what's in cell A5. I'm going to double click. Whoops, there. And sure enough, there's a formula here. I can see it in the cell. I can see it up above. And the formula says, do a computation. The equal says do a computation. And the computation is take what is in A4. So A4 has the number 3. So I'm going to take the number 3 and I'm going to add 1 to it. 3 plus 1 is 4. When I press enter, sure enough, that's a 4. Okay. All right. So now I have my row numbers. Now let's look. This invoice says that whoever is purchasing these items purchased 3 things that were $4.99 each. Okay, that's good. I need the total price for those 3 items. Well, that's a little bit less than $15. I could take a formula and I could say equals 3 times $14.99. Whoops, decimal point 99. But I want to do this in a more sophisticated way. I want as much flexibility as possible. So I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to put in my equal. I'm going to tell Excel, I want you to do a calculation. I'm going to click where the 3 is. And I want to multiply it. So times is the little asterisk up above the 8. And then I'm going to click where the $4.99 is. Now, before I press enter, let's take a look. The equals tells Excel it needs to do a calculation. Notice that the B2 here is blue, and that cell is colored blue. This is really going to be helpful for us all when we have more complicated formulas later on. So yes, blue times the red, that's the price each. I can double check to make sure that my formula is correct just by looking at those colors. And if I press enter, yeah. You may be wondering, why didn't she want to put in the 3 times $4.99 on her own? Here's why. Suppose I'm making this invoice and the customer comes back and says, no, I want 4 of those items. I would have to change this formula in here. Instead of doing that, look what happens. I'm going to come to where the quantity 3 is. I'm hitting the delete key to get rid of the 3, and I'm simply typing in a 4. And the formula adjusts. The formula has now adjusted to take into account that the customer wanted that extra thing. That's so much easier than recalculating everything. Okay, I would have to calculate the total sale price, the subtotal. There are so many new calculations I would have to do if I were using the numbers. But using the cells makes this much, much easier on us all. And again, just like I filled over here with the row numbers, I can fill with the total before discount. Notice when my cursor is just moving around, it's a fat white cross. So I want to move it up to that little nub in that little corner, that little dot in the corner, until it turns into the black crosshair. Then I click and I drag down. And when I let go, there are all my formulas. Let's double check. $8.99, I'm double tapping to look at the formula. 1 item times $8.99 per item. That's the correct formula. And again, when I fill down, everything moves down in the formulas as I check down my column. Okay. All right. Now, we have a discount of 20%. We want to calculate the price with the discount applied. The way that I do that is I take the price my 1996, and I subtract 20% of the price. So again, Excel is going to do a calculation. I'm going to enter this incorrectly. I want you to see how this can be a problem if we don't put the formula in correctly, because I want you to be able to look at a formula and find out if it needs to have a change. So this is the wrong way to calculate this right now. I'm going to tell Excel to do a calculation. I'm going to take my total before the discount. I'm going to subtract 20% of the total, so 20% of the time. And this is going to give me a correct answer, no problem. That answer is going to be correct. The problem comes when I try to fill this down. So I'm going to come back to my cell. And again, this is the incorrect way. I'm going to fill down. Okay. And look at that. In row 2, it didn't apply a discount at all. Something's wrong there. I don't know what's happening. So let's click on that cell and look at the formula. There's the cell. We can look at the formula there, but it's better to double click because now we see the colors. The blue cell, that one's correct. The D3 is correct, it's blue. But look where the red cell went. Oh, when I fill down, every cell in my formula fills down as well. And I don't want that to happen. I want this to be like, I don't know, like a gymnast in the Olympics where they do their jump and then at the very end they stick. I want that 20% to stick on every single formula. Here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to my first formula and I'm going to adjust it. Oops. I adjust it with some dollar signs. Before the I type a dollar sign. And then before the 1, so I have to use my mouse in there and get my mouse in between the I and the 1, and I type a dollar sign. Those dollar signs tell Excel, do not change the row, do not change the column. I'm not going to put those on the D2. The D2 I do want to move because when I go down the formula, I want this to apply to the 338 and the 899 and the 495. But I don't want the 20%, the red cell over here, I don't want that to change. So I put the dollar signs where I don't want it to change, leave dollar signs off where you do want it to change. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to refill. And it looks good. Let's check a formula just to double check. Blue is D3, that's good. And red is still I1. Woohoo, it's right. It's calculating correctly now. And again, if I double check, okay, if you had 50 of these in a column, you would not check every one, but it's always good to do a little spot check in a few cells just to double check. So blue is the 899. The red cell is the 20%. Yes, this is looking good. Okay. So now I've got my sale prices included. Now I'm going to get my subtotal, then calculate the tax, and then get my grand total. For subtotal, I'm going to show you 2 ways. I'm going to show you a slow way and a longer way. The slow way is, of course, I start with an equal, and then I click on each cell and add them up. Now, this might happen sometimes, that very last cell isn't visible. That's because when I'm typing in, the place that I'm typing gets bigger and I can't click on that cell right above. So what I can do is I can just come right up here and I can actually type E5. I'm just typing the E and typing the 5 in. And I've got my total. Let's double check if I come up here and double click. Look at my colors are working out just fine. I'm going to assume that the E5 is correct. Okay. But again, if this were very, very long, you wouldn't want to type it like that. There's another way I can do this. Equals, and I can type the word sum. I'm going to tell Excel to calculate things. This is a built-in formula. Oh gosh, look, you can see all these different formulas in Excel that you can use. We want to use sum. And when I use a built-in formula, I put everything in parentheses. I'm going to click on the first one. I'm going to put a colon in. Whoops. Yeah, that's colon. I typed a colon. And then I'm going to put the last one in. So, and I'm going to close parentheses. This formula says take everything between E2 and E5, so all of those numbers right there, and add them together. And when I hit enter, there's my total. Okay. Tax, that's easy. I'm going to take my subtotal and multiply, excuse me, not by the discount, I'm going to multiply it by the tax rate. And again, that's covered up, so I have to type it up here in the box, E6 times, and I'm clicking on the tax rate. And then for my grand total, that would be my subtotal plus, and again, I can't click on the tax because this is just filled up the space, so I'll just type E7. And there's my grand total. Few more things about cleaning up here. I'm not sure if that will, this will do it in here. Let me make this really small. Nope, it doesn't work. You can see if I change the size of my columns by just coming up here until my mouse or my cursor changes to that little weird little thing with the arrows, and then I click and drag. You can see I can make things wider or narrower, and if I make them too narrow, I don't see the entire number, so I want to make sure it's wide enough. I also want all of these things to be prices, so I can format these as prices. To do that, I'm going to click, hold down my mouse and drag. I can actually come to the very bottom, I think. And then come up here and click on the $sign. Now these are all prices. You can see they're formatted nicely with 2 decimal points. Another thing that might happen, and it's not showing up on this spreadsheet, but it does show up sometimes, is you might see a cell that has a bunch of hash marks in it. If you see those hash marks, that means that the cell is not wide enough to show your data. So in that case, again, I would just come up here and make my cell wider. So if that happens to you, don't panic. That just means that your cell is too narrow. Can I make it work? Can I make it happen? Oh. Yeah, there it is. So these hash marks, that just means the cell is too narrow. You can't see the entire number. So just come up here, click and drag, and then you'll be able to see everything. So don't panic if you see that. Okay, that's the end of the first video. The purpose of this video was to show you how to input formulas, how to fill formulas down, and how to put what's called an absolute cell reference, which was the $sign. So those $signs there. That's the purpose of this formula and of this this video, and also to make you aware of that type of error that can happen and not to scare you. All right, I will start working on the second one now.